So please, technical team, do we have Eyitemi?
Mr. Eyitemi, by the way, is also currently a fellow at the Python Software Foundation. You know, he does many things. He's a fellow at the Python Software Foundation and also a member of the Django Foundation. Yes. So you've already mentioned some of the things he did before, and we're adding more. So he's a man of many things, should I say? Yeah. There's many things that he's doing. So it's very wonderful to have such a person to be speaking with us today. Is Mr. Eyitemi ready?
Can anyone hear me? Oh, great. Okay. I think people on the call can hear me. How about people at the venue? I'll need acknowledgement, please, that you can hear me from the venue, please. Oh, okay. All right, great. Yeah, so hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Eyitemi Egbejule, and I'm a security engineer. Well, I do security engineering at SpaceTech, and on the side, I do security research, right? I think you've heard about me already, so I don't need to talk a lot more about what I do. But yeah, so I think one of the reasons why, first thing I should say thank you to organizers for setting up this conference, right? It's much needed in the ecosystem, much needed in the community, and thank you for doing a great job so far. Also, thank you for having me to speak on this conference. Yeah. Now, I'll jump right in to say that one of the reasons why I think I was specifically given this topic to speak on, right, thriving in cybersecurity markets in Africa, is because of the role I've played in the ecosystem for a long time, right? Helping to grow the ecosystem, to grow people in it, grow talent and all of that, right? So I have grown across the years and seen the markets on a wide scale, and I can pretty much tell how the current landscape is, what is required, and how to help you get up to that point, right? Yeah, so I'll start with saying that a lot of times it's been said that cybersecurity is most likely one of the largest risk factors that would jeopardize Africa's economy, right? Because companies transitioning to a position of e-commerce. So look at the that's Africa Container Free Trade Acts that was recently agreed upon and all of that, right? So Africa is transitioning to that position where we're focusing on e-commerce solely, and cybersecurity is seen as one of the largest factors that would possibly jeopardize Africa's economy, right? So there is a large demand for cybersecurity in our economy. There's a large demand for cybersecurity professionals across the ecosystem, across markets, right? Yeah, and there are also jobs available. So how do you position yourself to get into those jobs and all of that, right? Yeah. So I think I would say that if you look every new day, we hear news of a new startup that is raising up funding, right? Yesterday there was some announcement on Twitter about a startup that raised, I think, about $12 million as their seed round, which is to be what used to be some other companies' Series A previously, right? There's always news of startups raising. Startups are building stuff, building products to solve local problems, to yeah, pretty much just solve problems. And along the line, you hear, oh, so and so company got hacked, so and so. So, for example, I think one of the largest ones was a betting company that got hacked. Was it about 2 or 3 months ago? Yeah, 2 months ago, I think. And there's huge demand for cybersecurity. People are not starting to take security more seriously. People are not starting to put in place the need for security, hire security professionals, and all of that, right? So how do you come in? You're starting your career in cybersecurity. How do you position yourself? What do you need to do, right? So I think the first thing is to identify what domains you're interested in cybersecurity, right? So you have multiple domains. There's GRC, which is governance, risk, and compliance. There is security engineering, there's security testing, security assurance, asset management, and a bunch of other domains, right, across security. So first thing is identifying what domain you fit into or you want to grow your career in. Once you identify that domain, next thing will be to identify, okay, so what industries am I interested in? So, for example, am I interested in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, so FMGCs? Am I interested in fintech sector? Am I interested in healthcare, or interested in edutech or insurtech, right? Identifying the industry you're interested in. Once you've done that, right, you can now start positioning yourself to apply for jobs in that industry. So, for example, every fintech is mandated by regulation to adhere to security standards, security compliance standards, right? So, for example, if you're a fintech that is processing payments, you would most likely have to, not most likely, you definitely have to do PCI DSS, right? You'd also have to comply to ISO 701. And for a company to implement these standards, adhere to them, they need security professionals like you. So yeah, position yourself to get into those roles is the next thing, right? Yeah. So, like I said, mentioned, right, you've identified the industry you're interested in. Next thing you want to do is start reaching out to these people in these industries or companies you've identified, right? So you could say, create a list of companies. So, for example, fintech, right? I want to now work in a fintech. Like, I'm interested in security across payments, security across companies that are solving local payment problems, right? Yeah, that's what I've identified. Next thing I want to do now is to now start listing out startups or companies that fit into that industry, right? So I could go on Twitter and look at all the recent fintech startups that have launched in the last, say, 2 years or 3 years, or go on, say, services like AngelList, right? Or even Y Combinator, and look at startups that have been accepted into the incubator, right? List them out. Now you have a list, you have a more streamlined list. Then you can start looking out for mutuals, people who are in this industry, in these companies, and reaching out to them. Or you can even just go ahead and send cold emails, right? But all in all, your goal is to position yourself in such a way that if you're when you're reaching out to these people, you are most likely the right person for the job, right? So there's that. What else to say? Oh, quick one before I forget. I would say, please, if you have questions, you can ask questions. If you're online, you can ask questions, put questions in chat. I would answer them along the way as I go. And at the end, too, I would have, say, 2 to 3 minutes for questions. So please feel free to ask questions. Yeah. So that being said, yeah, there are, what's it now? That being said, we've talked about, okay, the fact that there's availability of jobs in the ecosystem, right? There are a lot of cybersecurity jobs waiting to be filled. There are companies, so every startup each day that launches, they in some way need security, right? In some way, they need to do compliance. Also, you see startups who raise funds. I'm talking specifically about startups because, well, that's a space I operate in daily. But same thing applies to traditional companies, applies to companies in other industries, right? Yeah. So these companies, they answer to board of directors, they answer to investors, and given precedents in past couple of years where companies have been hacked, companies that didn't pay particular attention to security have been hacked and all of that, right? And companies who are looking to grow and not paying more attention to security. You see, these companies are not paying attention to security, right? They are having defined security rules. So there's definitely jobs right out there, right? So you should rest assured there'll always be a job that fits your need, whatever niche it is you're looking to put yourself into. There'll always be a job out there that fits it, but it's for you to prepare yourself, grow skills, both technical and soft skills that will make you relevant when you eventually land that job. Yeah. So that being said, next thing I would say is as you're growing technical skills, you should be growing soft skills too. Soft skills like building relationships with companies, building relationships with what's it now? With people who run companies, who work in one traditional firm or the other, right? Investment companies, banks, and all of that. Build relationships. So there is an extent which your technical skill will take you to. There's an extent which you see a job on your platform, your CV is solid enough, right? But having built relationships in the past with people in the ecosystem and people in companies like this, it positions you better. And I would say because I've observed across, at least for the past 5 or 6 years, a huge chunk of security jobs or people who've gotten jobs in security industry in Africa have come through referrals, right? So on the average, every 3 to 4 business working days, I get a recruiter on LinkedIn who will reach out to me and say, "Oh, hi, Eyitemi. Do you know somebody that will be suitable for this role? I'll prefer a direct referral from you and not just the random person, right?" So yeah, security just comes from referral, and it will help if you build relationships. Yeah, and for people who are not necessarily interested in doing the 9 to 5 job, people who are not interested in waiting till that perfect job comes up, right? You can take a stab at building security products. So let's say if you identify the security problem in the ecosystem that you think needs solving, right? Yeah, go ahead and build a product, build a solution that would solve that problem. If you have to build clones, right? So for example, look at the Western markets, look at security products that have already been built there, that are already working, right? Solving a particular niche problem there. Look at the African market and look at how those problems are not yet fully solved because of our peculiar local contexts. So take, for example, I'll say, for example, in case of vulnerability disclosures, right? So disclaimer, I'm building something around that, or I've been building a product around vulnerability disclosures, right? But let's say, look at the Western markets. There's HackerOne, there's Bugcrowd, there's Integrity and others, right? Who are solving that problem in the Western markets, building around the laws and regulations that enable that there, right? But here in the African market, we don't necessarily have the same kind of laws that would enable that kind of product to be built, right? So what you do is pretty much just look at how it's built there and build similar here, work with what is available on ground, find ways to navigate local problems, right? And then you'd always have people, you'd always have a ready market, always have people who are willing to, willing to, patronize, to buy, to purchase your products, right? So yes, look for local problems, try to solve the local problems from a local perspective, right? In a way that global products do not solve. Yeah, and then hit the markets. Yeah, for another example I'll give is, I have looked across, maybe in the South African markets and East African markets maybe, but not in Nigeria, not in West African markets. There is no particular security consulting or security company that does only mobile security application testing, right? That tests mobile applications only. You'd see companies who are testing a lot of other things, right? So you could build something around that area, just build a very focused company. So for example, your company is just testing only mobile and, only iOS and Android mobile applications, right? And that's your niche area. And you're focusing on that, right? Before you know it, in 2-3 years time, you're building jobs for people, for other people coming after you. You are solving a very important problem, right? And you're also making revenue, making money, right? Which for most people is the major motivator for community security. Yeah, I won't fault it if you're chasing the bag. But yeah, so yeah, like I said, build security products if you have to. If you have to look at what works in Western markets, make a clone of it, adapt it to local problems, and then hit the markets. What else? Yeah, so another aspect that I see as a way we could position ourselves in the African market is security research. On the continent today, there are very few people who are doing focused security research, right? And when I say security research, I mean research into this thing, say, for example, automobile security, research into IoT. There are people who do, but not focused. They do just as one of the other things they do, right? But people who are doing focused, like for example, vulnerability research, malware research and all of that, right? So that's somewhere you can place yourself. You can just say, oh, I want to do this as a niche. I'm going to say, if you're going to count the top 10 people in Africa today who are doing hardware security or ICS security research, or doing vulnerability research or around, say, web browsers or OS kernels, right? Or hypervisors, you want to be there, right? That is a very niche area to position yourself into and do security research. Yeah, like I said, there are very few people that I'd have to think hard. I think I know a couple of people in Sudan, in South Africa. Then there's Amat Kama in Senegal, right, who is a world-renowned researcher. Yeah, I think he's won Master of Porn at Porn to Own a couple of times. Yes, there are people like that, right, you could look up to and position yourself to be world leaders in security research. And then lastly, I would say, okay, two things before I end up. I would say contribute to open source security projects. That's also a nice way to position yourself to getting the job you desire. And because if you look at it now, companies are now starting to adopt open source projects. So you can be building a project on the side, and the company who has been adopting your project internally would come and say, oh, you know what, we'll pay you to continue maintaining these projects. For example, Netflix does that in the US, where they have a team of about 200 and something people who just built for open source, right? They look at open source maintainers across the world and then hire them to join their team. And then you just pay them to build open source. So if you're passionate about building tools and products, open source projects, right? You can keep on doing that. Also, that's another way that company would, what's it now? You get their attention because you build an open source project that solves a problem they have encountered. And because of that, they can say, oh, come join us, we'll hire you to come work for us full time, right? Yeah, that's, and then lastly, and most importantly, please document your progress along the way. So as you go in, right, you're learning things, you're iterating, you're building stuff, please document, right? Write blog posts, document tutorials, record YouTube videos if you so wish, do podcasts as well, and all of that, right? You find out that along the years, you would have built a large body of knowledge that is available for other people to learn from, right? You learn from your mistakes, learn from all the things you've tried and all of that, right? And also something you can reference to. So, for example, I know someone that was hired for a role recently at one of the big companies, I think Madiant, and this person was, why he was hired was because he had been doing blog posts a lot, doing YouTube videos that covered a particular area of security research that nobody really pays attention to. And so they reached out to him and then hired him. Yeah. All this being said, please don't neglect the place of, what's it now? Don't neglect the place of communities, right? Remember to be involved in communities. For a community like Diary of Hackers, right? There are other communities out there. There is NigerSec Force, there is She Hacks, I think She Hacks Kenya, She Secures, a bunch of security communities out there. Please get involved in these communities. Yeah, and before you know it, we've taken over the whole of African markets. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.